Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Lunar Observer, the unscheduled podcast about fans discussing Insomniac games, the creators of Spyro, Ratchet, and Resistance. I'm Division 10, joined by KBABZ.
Hello, we're on the social medias now.
We are! KBABZ did a great job, and we'll be plugging all of that at the end of the episode.
Yeah. I also finally managed to finish all of those in-depth videos for the Mega March Madness Big Blow-Up Bonanza. Mega March Media Madness Big Blow-Up Bonanza.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. That's just a lot of recording. I did a few of them with you, but unfortunately, my work schedule prevented me from sitting down for, 8-10 hours and pumping all those out. So I'm really impressed. They're all up on YouTube. By the way, if you've noticed, we've switched exclusively over to the YouTubes for now.
Yeah, I still output these episodes in audio on the off chance that we find a place to upload audio versions of this podcast so that I don't have to go back and go, oh no, the files are missing. Oh!
Yeah. Unfortunately, SoundCloud is a very expensive option for us just because of the length of these episodes.
Yeah, and when they say you can upload a total of 3 hours, they mean 3 hours total audio onto your account, not 3 hours a day. And yeah, that's not feasible for us.
No. Considering that's 1 to 3 episodes, that's unfair to our listeners that every time we want to post a new episode that we've got to delete an old one. So yeah. That's out of the question. But the YouTubes is very, very good to us.
Yes, it is. Well, I was going to say it. What have we been up to lately?
Both thinking the exact same thing at the same time. As far as what I've been up to, work, volunteering, Skyrim, in that order.
Okay.
How about you? You've been working on that new updated timeline, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. For those who don't know, I have previously written a unofficial timeline for the old Gameverse continuity, as I call it, for Ratchet and Clank. Basically, all of the games and the comics from the original in 2002 up until Into the Nexus, but not counting Secret Agent Clank because it is a vid comic, as stated in Tools of Destruction. And that was for Into the Nexus. TJ Fixman actually learned about it and thought it was really awesome. I made that timeline mainly because I noticed that a lot of people still thought that the Great War occurred recently enough for Azimuth and Caden to have participated in it.
No, there's a huge gap. The Great War occurred way before they were born. They just found one lone Kragmite egg.
Yeah, exactly. In the comics, it is Artemis Zog who states that the Lombaxes used the Cyronox shard to create the Dimensionator, ending the Great War hundreds of years ago. So unless Lombaxes live for hundreds of years, that's impossible.
They did mention at one point, and we're talking in the PS2 era, when they used to have that Ask blog for Ratchet on Insomniac's forums. Insomniac word of God is that Lombaxes do live a long time, but that's still hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I was trying to think of a being that lives for hundreds of years, but I can't think of one. Yeah, so...
Elves?
Yeah.
What are they, space elves?
Yeah.
I mean, I was about to say Lombax is more like space dwarves or space gnomes.
Yeah, So yeah, I've been working on an official timeline based on the Movieverse, and I am drafting it up based on the junior novelization and the footage that we've seen so far of the games, taking into account that the game isn't final and I will make adjustments for the final build. So if a piece of dialogue is removed, say Captain Quark saying that the Blarg are responsible for the extinction of the Lombax race years ago, then that will not be included in the timeline. That will be deleted.
Yeah, I do remember last year them saying that was an earlier build of the game, and that line has been stricken from the record.
Yeah, which I am very glad for, because if I was in the writing room, I would have said, no, that's a terrible idea.
You don't have to tie everything back to the Lombaxes.
No, and we already we already know that the Cragmites are part of that. I mean, whether they're part of the movieverse, we don't know. It could be revealed that the Blarg are taking the new position of the Cragmites, but as of now, they are in the Schrödinger situation of they are simultaneously haven't and have, but we're assuming that they haven't. Anyway,
yeah. Moving on.
With the movieverse timeline, things actually get pretty tricky, considering that the novel, the movie, and the video game, in particular the video game, all have different approaches on what parts of the story they contribute, especially with Captain Quark retelling the events of the movie, which causes a lot of continuity issues. One of the biggest is the fact that Ratchet uses weapons proficiently, and yet when he joins up with the Rangers, he's shown to be absolutely terrible with using any weapon he picks up.
Yeah, you can see this in one of the trailers for the movie where he's just absolutely abhorrent is probably the wrong word, just terrible with all of, terrible with every weapon he picks up. The fusion grenade goes whoo, and all of the rocket launchers are firing back at him, they're heat-seeking him, and it's just bad.
Yeah. Interestingly, the game skips over that scene to not draw attention to the issue. So I've taken that as meaning that this is a visible way of showing that Quark has realized that he has made that error and just doesn't tell that part of the story to draw attention away from the fact that he just told a massive plot hole. And I am assuming that Ratchet does do the events mostly of the games. He just defeats all his enemies with the wrench until he joins up with the Rangers and gets proper combat training. Speaking of seeing stuff on Kerwan,
yes,
we talked about the Mega March Madness Big Blow Up Bonanza, except in the making of the list in the last episode, I totally forgot to include the bit where we actually talked about how we felt about it in general and overall. Oops.
Well, considering that episode was already 2 hours, and that we were talking about it pretty much immediately after seeing all of that material, for me, it's great that it's just a nice chance for me to sit down and think about it for a while. Hey, what does all of this mean? What was interesting? What wasn't? I touched on a little bit of it with the cards, which I thought was a really cool idea in our last episode, but I'd like to talk about one thing that bugged me. I don't know about you.
So what did you think of the previews in general? How do you feel about how the game is shaping up so far?
Well, between what I got to play at PSX on Pokitaru, I'm going to say the train station setting and BTS notwithstanding, because those are incredibly early builds with the wrong weapons, as we've now discovered.
Yeah, well, we've seen actually the train station section updated because Polygon actually did the train section as well as GameSpot with what we are assuming to be the proper weapons for when we get the final version of the game.
Yes, but where I'm going with this is that Pokitaru of the three was the most recent build. If you look at the build of the Metropolis train section versus what was played by Polygon, you'll see huge differences just in the way that it plays.
Yeah, like the removal of the Warmonger changes it. It makes a huge difference in how you approach tackling blargs on other carriages and helicopters, because you now have to be much more careful, because your only really viable weapon is the fusion grenades for those guys.
Or your wrench, since you can throw it like a comet. You can still do the boomerang strike, the comet strike.
Yeah, exactly.
The blaster also, but that's just pea shooting it.
Yeah, Combustor. The Combustor seems to be dealing a much less amount of damage this time around, but that might actually be due to the difficulty, as we mentioned last time.
It also might be due to the fact that I'm noticing a lot of the people who streamed the game didn't really mess around with the Raritanium upgrade system, so we don't know how good that the Combustor was, what level it was, as well as what mods it had attached to it.
Yeah, the combustor would definitely be the first weapon that I would upgrade. I mean, even if it does a weak amount of damage, if you just upgrade the fire rate, that means you're still technically dealing more damage, you're just losing ammo quicker for it, which to me is a fair trade-off, because ammo crates are quite plentiful.
They are, but as we mentioned in last episode, there is still that threat of running out of ammo, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that we noticed this later, that all of those in-depth looks, they're all very specifically 80 minutes. 80-minute in-depths. Which means, which kind of lets me know that they had a hard limit on how much they were allowed to upload.
Yeah, and the demo did certainly end at a specific point after you completed the first 5 levels. Nobody showed Velden.
For obvious reasons, spoilers probably. But the point I was trying to make about it being 80 minutes specifically, Polygon cut out sections of their videos. We could tell because other streamers that did it for the game did not cut out sections and didn't get as far. The Polygon showed all of its levels, so it cut out stuff. But on top of that, a lot of them almost seemed as if they were speedrunning it, because they wanted to show as much as they could in that 80-minute block that they had.
Yeah, I think it's also significant to note that in the case of GameSpot's playthrough at least, the guy playing the game mentions that he completed the demo 4 to 5 times, so he knew that demo in and out, and I think he did that so that he could show the most amount of content without wasting time having to die and replay sections, and that he knew where everything was. He wasn't wasting time not knowing what to do.
Yeah, so would a normal person on their first run be able to do all of that in 80 minutes? Unless they were very, very, very good, I highly doubt it. These are people who played the game multiple times in order to squeeze as much as they could in the 80 minutes that they were, I'm guessing, allowed to show. If not allowed to show, then what they felt was the max amount of time that made sense to show. But given that all of them have 80 minutes... Easy. Yeah, but given that all of them had 80 minutes with Ratchet and Clank, it really felt to me like that was sort of a limitation that was put upon them by the PR team or something similar. Yeah. It's just an odd number to choose.
Yeah. It could also... Considering that playing on easy would mean that you would defeat the enemies quicker, but it could have been a stipulation in the non-disclosure agreement that the places had that any footage you upload should have the game playing on normal. And if that is the case, then I would imagine that the reason for that would be to show the fact that on normal, Ratchet is difficult. You are having ammo problems. You are having to be creative and thoughtful with your weapons. A lot of the time, players died, Kinda Funny and GameSpot included, because they weren't using their weapons properly. They ran out of ammo on the blaster, and they weren't really willing to purchase or use the porositor, which would have been very helpful to them.
Yeah, I saw several streamers who just didn't want to buy the porositor. They're like, ooh, the pixelizer looks cool. I'm just going to buy that. Another case another thing that I'm noticing with a lot of these is that they're not going into the upgrade screen, or they're not buying ammo at all. They're just picking up crates when you've got Gadgetron vendors everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for time.
Yeah,
or if that was
messing around with the Raritania mods would be an easy time sink, so I can very easily imagine that's why they wouldn't go into that particular system too much.
True, but even just going into the Gadgetron, you don't have to go like the old games, item by item and buy ammunition. It's the Kraken Time into the Nexus system where you can click a single button and buy all ammo.
Yeah.
So it's not a particularly time-taxing item. And even then, I could see them cutting that if they wanted to cut for time.
Yeah, on a GameSpot stream at least, it was actually a live stream with a chat. Polygon's was edited because it didn't have anybody narration. That was a guy just recording what he was doing and editing it down to 80 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say this earlier, but as much as I don't like the way the porositor works, I still know that it is a very valuable weapon to have because it one-hit kills small enemies, and it's a long stream, which makes it great for those one-hit kill small enemies that arrive in swarms, like the robot dogs on Metropolis.
Yeah, the area on Iridia, just like the original game, is made for the Porositor.
Correct.
Is really designed. You get it on Iridia for one.
No, you get it on Nivalis.
Oh, you get it that early? I didn't realize that it's on Nivalis this time around.
It was on Nivalis the first time around. At the same price, actually, I think.
Huh. I honestly do not remember that. I'm going to have to go check it out.
Yeah, well, you have bad memories of Ratchet and Clank 1, so I don't blame you. So, yeah, is the game coming along quite well, do you think?
I do, but I do want to talk about one issue that I have.
Okay. Well, I thought it was important. It's easy to just focus entirely on the bad stuff and not talk about the good stuff, so that Insomniac thinks, oh no, everyone thinks the game sucks.
No, the game's great, and while I delve into the one thing that I don't like, I'm going to be talking about what I do like of the same thing. And this sounds very weird until I talk about what it is, and it's the animation.
Okay.
90%.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's sort of it's like two sides of the same coin by showing two different examples.
Yes. So, the animation is both amazing and terrible, and I'm going to go into why. Amazing. Every enemy comes to life. Every moving around Ratchet just feels right. Both when I played it at PSX and in general seeing these streams. His animations are good. Clank's animations are good is an understatement. Great. It really the whole we're playing a Pixar movie. It feels like we are in fact playing a Pixar movie.
Yeah, I said this in the last episode, but to be perfectly honest, with all of the hand animated animations, they look way better than what's in the movie. Sorry, Blockade, but that's the truth. I think Insomniac is doing a much better animation job than you guys are, or were able to do under the constraints that you have.
On the other hand,
yep,
the dialogue scenes. Now
well,
I've got
not the dialogue scenes, but those sort of automated A camera, B camera cutscenes reminiscent of what we saw in the Future Saga.
Most notably in Tools of Destruction.
Yeah, where it was used a lot with, those cutscenes for whenever you talked with the smuggler.
Smuggler and Aphelion. Aphelion got away with it a little bit easier because she's a ship and therefore has no mouth. But
yeah.
The smuggler in particular was it was very obvious that it was they had some kind of animation program. They typed in the words that were being spoken, and it syncs the lip movements.
Because of the
something
way that
along those lines.
It works as an animator. I think it's more that they have, and this is something that this is an actual technique that is used in the animation industry, particularly when laying out the groundwork for your animation, is that you lay in the mouth shape for ah and oh and ooh and e and the and that sort of thing. You plug those in as poses for the mouth, and then you sync that up according to the dialogue. So, at this particular point in time in the cutscene, Ratchet performs a D shape because he's saying destruction or something like that. And you can see these poses in a final cutscene in Tools of Destruction, where Ratchet is all like, I don't know, there's no way I'm gonna in the scene where it is fortunate cryosleep doesn't work on robots.
giant boxing glove straight to the face.
As an animator, I can tell that the lip animation wasn't actually finished for that cutscene in time for the game to come out, which is understandable. But we've got an entire system based on that.
Yeah, so it feels lazy, especially considering how amazing I'm calling them dialogue cutscenes because that's what they are. There's no action occurring in those cutscenes. It's stuff like Ratchet and the plumber, Ratchet and Skid McMarks, Ratchet and the mayor, when they're just talking to do. There's no action. On the other hand, you have the hand-drawn ones, like the one with Ratchet and Brax on...
Hand-drawn?
Hand-animated.
Thank you.
cut me. Okay, yes, I know animation is not drawing, non-equivalent. This is coming from someone who did a little bit of stuff in the 2D world when I was in high school. So, anyway, you have the difference between that and then that scene where Ratchet's excited, he's got his ranger armor, and he's pumping his fists while he's talking to Brax. Very clearly hand animated. Or just the general cutscenes, like when the two of them... go ahead.
When it cuts back to after Ratchet's interview with Juanita, and the Blug mercenary puts a bomb on Ratchet's ship, and Ratchet notices, whips Clank off, jumps off the platform, lands onto a train, and onto the ground. That is some beautiful animation.
Yes, it is. Basically, anytime there's an action sequence, it's gorgeous. Anytime there's in-game stuff, it's gorgeous. The purely dialogue scenes, though...
Yeah, and you can tell that they're dialogue scenes, these automated dialogue scenes, if it's two characters rooted to the ground for almost the entirety of the cutscene. Not if they don't change the position of their feet for most of the cutscene, it's an automated one.
Yeah, and I understand why they did it. I mean, there's a limited budget. You've got to cut it somewhere. But given
the entire team is working on the animation for Sunset Overdrive 2. We know you're working on it, Insomniac. Don't deny it.
I really hope they are, and I need to go to my friend's place and play the first one. I saw all of the videos, and it's gorgeous. Back to Ratchet, though. I get it, they had to cut somewhere. But given how amazing the rest of it looks, the fact that the dialogue scenes are just average makes them look terrible. And it's frustrating to me because the rest of it just looks so good. Everything, from the models to the rendering to the animation in the game to the texturing, it's all there. Except for that. And it's like, considering how much more dialogue this game has, that even of just the planets we've seen, than any other Ratchet and Clank game we've seen to date, that's what bugs me the most.
Still better than Mass Effect's animation, though. I should go.
Go ahead. Yeah, do you have any gripes, or are you going to talk about something that you liked? Because I think I was 50-50 on that.
To finish off that particular topic, I'll be perfectly honest, I was pleasantly surprised at the animation quality of those cutscenes, automated scenes, because the last time we saw them was the Gaspar playthrough for, I forgot what event it was. It wasn't PSX, it was way before that.
I believe it was E3.
Paris Games Week. Okay, yeah, it was for E3, where the last time we had seen this automated system, it was for talking with the brain scientist on Gaspar, and that looked really disappointing and very Tools of Destruction-like, and everyone pointed out how robotic it looked. And so, the animation that we've seen for those automated scenes, Ratchet actually has some, proper facial expressions. He changes his pose. He does a short little animation with his body that is exclusive to particular scenes. So that was impressive to me, that Insomniac used some of the extra time from the later than expected release of the movie by the distributor to make those scenes better.
Well, we haven't seen the Gaspar scene since. I don't know if they've changed that particular one or not.
Okay, but all of the cutscenes that we saw, all of the automated ones, looked way better than Gaspar. All of them. None of them looked exactly like what Gaspar was giving us.
That's true. Gaspar only had one big facial expression for Ratchet, and that was sort of like the eyes bugging out that he's very well known for when the scientist says that he collects brains for a hobby. Other than that, it's just him talking.
Yeah, and literally just him talking. He's not expressing himself through the animation. Okay, so onto my two gripes. One is minor, one is major, and I'll start with the minor one first. Inconsistencies with the holo cards.
Oh yeah, with both backstory as well as some
No,
of the
not
models that they
backstory.
used.
Yeah, it's not backstory, it's the pictures, where some of the pictures that have been used are wrong. Um, so, for example, the picture for the Rhino holo card of the original Rhino from Ratchet and Clank 1 shows the weapon facing backwards and on its side. So it should be rotated 45 degrees and then turned around so that all 9 barrels from the front are pointing at us, so that it's facing the correct way.
Yeah, the other one I noticed, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was another weapon that was mislabeled.
The OmniRange 8000.
Yes, that one. Yeah, one of the wrenches was the wrong wrench. Wasn't it the
Yeah.
Quest for Booty wrench?
Yeah, it was the kinetic tether. Now, what it looks like is that the holocards are justifying this by saying that the OmniWrench Millennium 12 is that with lightning arcing from the head of the wrench. But to me, the OmniWrench 8000 should be represented with the promo art that was used for the wrench for Tools of Destruction. And on the video, if you quickly flick over to it, I'll probably be overlaying a picture of this promo art that I have on my hard drive. So this artwork does exist. The holocards are almost entirely using existing promotional artwork. So Deadlocked Weapons used the renders of the weapons that were eventually used for the weapons menu in the game itself, which is really cool. So either Insomniac forgot that they had that promo art, or, and this is actually something that, I know this is minor, but this is something that I don't really want. They're rebranding the Ratchet's new wrench that he picked up in Quest for Booty as the OmniWrench Millennium 12 for the movieverse before he gets the kinetic tether attached to it. And yeah, I don't really like that at all, because that doesn't acknowledge the fact that Ratchet, despite the Millennium 12 being the most frequently used wrench, and it is a good looking wrench, before it was introduced, the OmniWrench 8000 was the quintessential iconic wrench that Ratchet used.
Yeah, the silver only wrench.
Yeah, exactly. It appeared in Ratchet and Clank 1, the first half of, the first third of Going Commando, and all of Tools of Destruction. So
Yeah.
it would be really disappointing for me to see it just go unacknowledged like that, and the name attributed to something else. The other inconsistency that I noticed was... That's it, I got it. It's Zircon Jr. The holocard for Zircon Jr. uses a promotional render of Zircon the Destroyer from A Crack in Time when he got a cyan blue paint job, not Zircon Jr. from Into the Nexus, which is
The only
odd.
game that it's appeared. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure Insomniac will say that these are old builds and they fixed these. I seriously hope that they do, because it would be a shame that to have these little hiccups make their way into the final game and then never get fixed because it's too minor of a problem to make a patch for it.
Yeah. Either they've already caught those and fixed them, or that's just what it's going to be at this point. I'm pretty sure, since we're less than a month away, the game has to have gone gold by now.
Yeah. That makes me sad. Which also makes me sad about the major thing that I was going to talk about, which is, despite the fact that I didn't find this a problem at PSX, the more I look at the way the camera moves, the more I hate it.
Well, they did say there's multiple camera options. When we were PSX, it was fixed to one of them.
Yes, but I'm talking about the actual feel of the camera. I'm not talking about what, I think it's Icy Flames on the forums who talks about this a lot, with the actual positioning of the camera relative to Ratchet, especially when he's shooting. He feels that it comes too close to Ratchet. But what I'm talking about is the way the camera moves when you adjust it with the left stick. Sorry, the right stick. If you're trying to adjust the camera with the left stick, I have news for you. And basically, when you let go of the right stick when adjusting the camera instantly stops. it doesn't do this nice sort of a slow down glide like it used to in the old games, in particular the Future Saga. And that makes it feel incredibly robotic, and I really don't like it.
See, I never was bothered by the camera.
Well, yeah, ultimately I will be able to play the game and function just as well as I used to, but the feel of the way the camera moves has a big impact. Think about the way the camera moves in Into the Nexus and Full Frontal Assault compared to, say, Going Commando or A Crack in Time. It doesn't feel as smooth and natural and pleasurable to move about.
No, Into the Nexus in particular gave me motion sickness the first time I played it. It took me a while to get used to the camera visually.
The other thing I also noticed is the fact that the camera doesn't seem to adjust itself when you're walking forward. As an example, if you point the camera up or down, in particular if you're pointing it down, if you move Ratchet forwards, the camera doesn't adjust itself so that it's level anymore, which is rather annoying for me if you're just walking about with the wrench and not actually engaging in combat. Obviously, keeping the camera locked to where you're pointing at as you move around is essential for when you're fighting, but for when you're just moving around casually, as I said, it feels too robotic, it feels too much like an MMO camera.
I guess because the times I've played with it have been pretty short. I felt that it was closer to Into the Nexus than Tools, but it wasn't nearly on the level of awkwardness that Into the Nexus's camera had.
Yeah, but as he said, it's likely far too close to release to fix that particular issue.
Yeah, it's already past the point of, it's for either of those things, they've either already caught them, or the other camera alternatives, in the latter case, other camera alternatives are available and they take care of that, or it's not going to change.
Yeah. And just before we move on to the next segment, I do want to make it clear that from what I could tell, this was present in both Lockstrafe, and it's fine in Lockstrafe, but it was also present in the classic normal camera mode, and that is what's bothering me.
I haven't seen any Lockstrafe playthroughs.
No, I haven't either, actually. But it is there. GameSpot actually went into the camera controls options menu and showed that Lockstrafe was an option.
Yeah, and they did mention it on the forums as well.
Okay, so we've already taken half an hour just talking about that, so we better move on into the news. So, the first piece of news happened on the 18th of March, and it was Edge of Nowhere's release window. It was indirectly revealed by Oculus with their launch game list, and was confirmed by Insomniac over on the forums. I believe it was you, Division 10, who asked Viddy about it, and he replied with, launch window.
Yeah, so he said launch window, but as has been released by Oculus itself, it is not launch day.
Yeah, so it is therefore not a direct launch title for the game, and the date proper remains as mysterious as the eldritch abominations within the game itself.
So, he did say it should be, he did say launch window, tongue sticky outy face, for lack of a better word. But
yeah.
Is that launch window as in that week, that month, that
Or is
quarter?
this launch window like the order where it's like, oh, sorry, we had to delay it. Sorry, apologies, sorry.
Oh, I don't know. But considering that they already have a playable build at places like South by Southwest, I'd be interested to see how far along it is really.
Yeah, I trust Insomniac to release it on time. The only time that I recall that they had to delay a game was actually with Tools of Destruction. They had a bug that they really were having trouble figuring out how to fix, so they delayed the game by a week, but then, like, a day later, they pushed the release date back to the original spot when they fixed the bug earlier than expected and were able to release the game on time. So, one of the few instances of a game being undelayed.
Yeah, and Ratchet & Clank 2016 wasn't delayed because the game And
No, it had its production schedule extended, which isn't a delay because it never actually had a release date. It only ever had 2015 as its, most narrow, officially announced launch date.
Well, not just that, but the game probably would have been ready at its original area of release.
But the automated cutscene still would have sucked.
Yes. Well, not just that, but have you seen the difference in Gaspar gameplay between the original pictures that they released and even just that cutscene? It's a huge difference in texturing.
Yeah, they improved the look of the lava so that it's not just a pool, it actually has crusts and stuff so that it looks more visually interesting.
And I'm assuming, since we didn't see very much of other levels, that most of the levels got improvements like that.
Yeah. I also noticed while looking at articles for Edge of Nowhere that Robin Atkin Downes is voicing the protagonist, Victor Howard. Ratchet fans will recognize him as the voice of Captain Romulus Slag in the Future Saga.
Without the drunken piratey voice?
Yeah. I mean, I would be shocked if Victor was actually Captain Slag under a Hollow Guise.
You never know.
So, speaking of characters being lost in hallways of complete madness, Edge of Nowhere was at Game Developers Conference.
Well, you gotta say, the Moscone Center aren't hallways of madness.
No, I mean, well, we were at Moscone West, weren't we? For PSX.
Yes, but that's where GDC is being held.
Cool. Yeah, I like the split level design, but we talked about that already.
Yeah.
Polygon's Charlie Hall wrote a direct article with his impressions of the game. He stated that Insomniac went with a third-person perspective for the game to help acclimate users who weren't used to playing in VR and help make them as comfortable as possible. From my perspective, it also actually helps the game because it helps actually put almost a positive name onto Edge of Nowhere, where Edge of Nowhere is, that third-person VR game that isn't first-person.
Yeah, except that it's surprising there's a number of third-person VR games that are actually coming out. They weren't lauded at say PSX, but now we're starting to see launch lineups of PSVR, of the Oculus, of the the Vive?
Yeah, the HTC Vive.
Vive. And you'd be surprised, it's still a majority in the first person, but it's not just Edge of Nowhere in third.
Yeah, I know. It's just that Edge of Nowhere is associated as that third-person one because it was one of the first notable games to do it. Or at least announced that it was doing it.
But what's interesting is, as we've mentioned on the announcement video that we did several months back, it's not just third-person. It's third-person where your head is the camera.
Yeah,
which is
the best
really
way that
cool.
the best way that I can think of to describe how the camera works is think All for One's camera, except it tracks much closer to the character you're controlling. And so the camera is on an invisible rail, but your head still has direct control over where the camera is pointing.
Yeah, so I think the best way to imagine it is, have you ever played Pokemon Snap?
No. I never had a Nintendo 64. It was a piece of garbage. I'm sorry. That's the honest truth from a PlayStation fanboy.
Hey, I never owned one either, but there was this store called Blockbuster near me when I was growing up. This is going to date me real quick. And you could play Pokemon Snap there and then actually print out your Pokemon on little stickers. Like, you could print out the photos that you took. The way the game worked is that you were on a rail. You couldn't move or walk your character around. What you actually did was physically controlling a camera as your character auto-walked. So now, in this one, the main character is still moving via your controls, but your head is like that camera in Pokemon Snap.
Huh. Pokemon Snap was on rails?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And the controller was garbage too. Anyway. The preview mentions Insomniac implementing gameplay design to encourage the player to look up, as well as in other different directions rather than straight ahead and towards Victor. For example, ice chunks can fall down from the ceiling while you're climbing up an ice wall, so you are encouraged to look up so that you can actually see the ice chunks coming and avoid them. Another example is enemies that can give away their hiding spots by dropping black ooze from above, giving the player the chance to pick them out early and dislodge them by throwing a rock and grabbing an easy melee kill once they hit the ground.
Yeah, so you being the camera is actually for puzzle solving purposes, and that's super cool.
Yeah, well, it's not puzzle solving, but it is an actual part of the gameplay. The game being in VR isn't just a gimmick, they're actually implementing it as part of the gameplay design. Now, this is probably one of the coolest bits. Cutscenes played out by actually putting the player right next to Victor, as if they're standing next to him in a circle of conversation, like in the moment. Charlie Hall, the Polygon article writer, stated that he'd, quote, never been that close to a cutscene before. It was almost intimate, and certainly something completely new for me in VR, unquote. End quote, I mean. I don't know, I'm not used to this whole reporting thing. So that's really cool. I like the idea of actually being placed in the circle of conversation in a cutscene. If I were to put an example on Ratchet, imagine he's talking to the smuggler, and you're standing next to Ratchet shaking your head like, this smuggler is not a legitimate businessman, is he?
Legitimate business only going on here, right now.
Yes. It's like, with a crowbar!
But that's the interesting thing for me, is that there's two kinds of games that gamers tend to play. You're either taking on the role of a character, or you're sort of overseeing it all. You're either still playing as that character, or you're modifying the terrain directly, like, say, Final Fantasy Tactics, or usually other tactical games where you're sort of giving orders to large groups of people. Or Final Fantasy 12, where you're not playing the main character, you're sort of guiding everybody along, but you're not playing a specific person. You're sort of like the overseer of a group of 3 people.
Yeah.
Edge of Nowhere seems to be taking that latter approach.
Okay.
You're not, I mean, yeah, you're directly controlling the main character, but you, the player, as the camera, are sort of guiding him rather than being him.
Well, yeah, that's how it works with any third-person game, and to be quite frank, most first-person games as well. Yeah, you're put in the shoes of Master Chief, but you're not Master Chief.
I don't know. See, this is where I would say split. Like, any Ratchet and Clank game I play, you're Ratchet. Yeah, even though it's third person, you still... Do you yell "ow" when you get hit?
Well, yeah, but only because I know it hurts for Ratchet, and it is impacting my, in terms of experience, completely separate gameplay happenings. You know, it brings me closer to death in terms of playing the game.
I suppose that's a difference in how different people experience games, and I know that there's actually researchers right now who are trying to do research on this very subject of, with third-person games, there are people who take both of our approaches. Some people, like myself, feel like they are the character. Obviously, I know I'm not Ratchet, but when you're playing the game, like, do you feel that you're guiding him, or do you feel that you are him? And
I don't feel that I am him, but I do at least try. I do find that I'm often playing in a style where I'm like, oh, Ratchet would totally do that. Which I don't think is quite the same thing. I'm not sort of going, I'm Ratchet. Where are my fuzzy Lombax ears?
I don't even mean that you're suddenly a Lombax. I mean that you feel like you're not playing as the character. You're the one who's shooting. Ratchet's not shooting. You're shooting.
Yeah, true, but I see that purely from a gameplay mechanics perspective. To have another example, when I'm playing Mass Effect, I might create a particular character, like in my first playthrough it was Carl Shepard, and I try to roleplay as her through acting in the game, but I don't feel as if I am that character myself when I'm playing. I'm just trying to replicate what I think the character is doing. It's a bit like, well, I've never played a tabletop, pencils and graph paper style role-playing game, but I'd imagine it would be very similar to that type of game, like, say, Pathfinder, where you try to guide your character along the route that you think they would take. And even when I'm playing as quote-unquote myself, I'm often playing as a better version of myself, who is actually heroic and wouldn't cower at the sight of an ankle biter on Navalis or something like that.
But that's the interesting dissonance between players, and I think that's going to become more and more apparent with VR. Those two approaches to playing video games. And, from a non-gameplay mechanic, that actually has a lot to do with how we handle virtual reality medicine and other non-gaming applications. If some people, such as yourself, simply can't put themselves in the game mentally, that means something for virtual reality treatments. How do we handle people, say, coming back with PTSD, who just simply can't visualize themselves in the game?
Yeah, VR does have an opportunity to sort of take the hand of a character creation system and not sort of say create a character. It will say create you. Put on the clothes that you want, pick the skin color and body type that you are, but you are not encouraged to make a character. And because you are in VR, being transported into the head of a particular thing properly this time rather than looking at it through a screen, then it is more effective in it being able to say you are playing as you, not a facsimile of you. Back to Edge of Nowhere, which is also in VR. Olga stated that his team isn't actually sure how long the game would be, giving the odd bracket of saying between 2 to 10 hours.
That's a really wide bracket.
Yeah, considering that the game is, from what we can tell, and this is the bread and butter of what Insomniac does, a leveled structure, linear gameplay type of game, as opposed to an open world of Minecraft where your gameplay session can last 2 hours because you didn't see that creeper. God damn it!
And then, boom, there goes your house.
Yeah. That's a very nice diamond chest plate you have there. It'd be a shame if
something happened to it.
Oh, hi, Car. How's it going? Anyway, 10 to 2 hours. That either means the game is still in a very nebulous state at this point in time, or there is a lot of the game that they're considering cutting out.
Or a third option is there's a lot of side quests that people can simply ignore.
That's a good point, too. I mean, yeah, Insomniac has put replayability into almost all of their games. Even Gems and Spyro players want to collect all 400 gems in a level, for example. So it would not surprise me if there were actually things strewn about the levels that you would want to pick up. Say the Resistance style, picking up documents and stuff alluding to the adventure and that sort of thing. Actually, a thought of mine, something occurred to me yesterday that I was thinking about. What if Edge of Nowhere and Song of the Deep were in the same universe?
Well, we actually don't know what time period Song of the Deep is set in.
No, I mean, it is ambiguously said. What if you finally find Merrin's dad, and then it says, Merrin's dad has been killed by unspeakable creatures. To find out, play the sequel, Edge of Nowhere, only on Oculus.
Well, considering that there are sort of these weird creatures underwater, I'm curious to see if the art departments kind of coordinated that.
Maybe. I kind of doubt it. I mean, to be perfectly honest, that's just a wild fan theory. I don't actually believe that, but it's hilarious to think about.
Yeah, but like we know, Edge of Nowhere is set in the early 1900s.
Yeah, which also puts it in fantastic prequel territory for Resistance, so it could also be a Resistance prequel.
But the interesting thing about Song of the Deep is your submersible is very timeless. there's really no indication of technology past, like, say, the steampunk era. So it could be any time after the late 1800s. It doesn't
Yeah,
particularly look modern to me. It could be.
yeah. The quickest way I find to identify the time period of a particular piece of work is to look at the cars, and that will instantly tell you when a particular story takes place. As an example, when I was making the Infamous timeline, I seem to enjoy writing these timeline documents. I looked at the cutscene where, spoilers for Infamous 1, Kessler does his time travel thing, and when he time travels back in time, I took a look at the car that he was standing in front of, and it dates to the 1930s. So that's how I was able to tell when in time he warped back to. Oh
Yeah,
god,
and
all this stuff
and
is a prequel for Resistance, Edge of Nowhere, and Infamous. Everything's a prequel to something else.
well, The Incredibles, a lot of people think it's a modern story, but if you look at the vehicles, they're all from the 70s.
Yeah, correct. They're often inspired by the 70s and what the 50s thought the future would look like. Allgeier also said he wasn't sure of the price point either, but he did say that the game would be ready for shortly after the Oculus is launched this spring, or autumn if you're in the bottom hemisphere of this planet. Now, what was also at Game Developers Conference was Song of the Deep. It was present and playable, with Insomniac tweeting out a picture of, I believe, Microsoft's own Phil Spencer playing and enjoying the title in the Xbox section of the show.
As well as some really sweet pins.
Yeah, you want those pins, don't you? You collect them?
I collect, yes, I actually collect video game and Disney pins, so I saw that and I was like, grabby hands, and they're giving away pins at South by Southwest too.
Well, there goes another $40 on eBay. Now, oh, no, you first.
I've got a bunch of rare pins. I'm sure I could trade with somebody. That's the point of pins. If I'm not able to go to an event, I find someone who has, and I figure out what they want in exchange.
Yeah,
it's a
that's
side
why you
quest.
grab several, so you can trade something you want for something else.
Exactly.
Now, US gamers Jazz Rignall provided a hands-on impression of Song of the Deep. Jazz described the gameplay of the demo, revealing a puzzle involving the head of a statue that you had to fling through a gate, but then you had to fling it back through the gate onto the statue. I couldn't figure out why that was the case, but I'm thinking it's actually a double gate mechanism, where a gate is either open or one gate is open and one gate is closed, and what that orientation is depends on whether the head is on or off the statue. So to open the way forwards, you have to throw the statue back. Yeah. Another puzzle involved swimming out as Marin and solving a light beam redirection puzzle to open the way for his sub. And that is something that actually genuinely surprised me, because I didn't think that Song of the Deep would have that type of puzzle in it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it from what we know of Song of the Deep at GDC. The game looked pretty as always, and it looked fairly solid. I like the way that the ship was able to propel about underwater and use its grappling hook for various tasks, like picking up objects or just keeping the ship in place in a very strong current that it was trying to get through.
Yeah, it really feels like, I know this is going to be a very weird comparison, but I was getting a very Howl's Moving Castle vibe from that ship.
Yeah, that was actually something that I meant to mention. This was in a topic that we've decided to next on the episode. We'll talk about it later. But I mentioned somewhere, Ted mentioned that one of Song of the Deep's inspirations was Miyazaki. And I say, Division 10, help me out here. I don't know what that film is.
Yeah, if it's a Miyazaki film, I will know it.
So what do you think is the inspiration then? Or did you just say it?
For Ponyo.
Okay. You'll have to explain that to me. I mean, for people who don't know in the audience, yes.
Okay, so Ponyo is Studio Ghibli's answer to The Little Mermaid. Mm-hmm. And the final third of the movie, the town where the main characters are gets flooded, and they're walking up and underwater All the roads and the town is mostly underwater, and there's these massive, gorgeous fish, and they're walking and swimming alongside of these fish. Just the fact that it's passing between being on land with, say, whales just standing on the edge of a road, well, swimming on the edge of a road, to suddenly having to dive deep underwater just to go from one area to another. I got a very strong Ponyo vibe from this. It's a fairly recent movie. I believe it was 2006, 2007. I can look that up for you.
So, Roundabout Tools of Destruction, I'll look it up. How do you spell it? Ponyo?
Ponyo.
Okay, got it. It came out in 2008, so the Quest for Booty year, as I call it.
Yeah, so if we're talking Studio Ghibli influence, I'm pinning it on Ponyo.
Okay, cool. So on to the next and probably final topic for today's episode, Ratchet & Clank Game Writer. It is known that TJ Fixman has contributed to the writing of the upcoming 2016 Ratchet & Clank game, as he did for all the PS3 titles. Recently, Brandon Winfrey shared a bit more information. For those who don't know, Winfrey is a personality on Inside Gamer, and is a former employee of Insomniac Games, host of Sunset TV, and the final boss in Sunset Overdrive's Dawn of the Rise of the Fallen Machines DLC. He is known as Bwin on the Insomniac forums. Winfrey mentioned during a preview of the 2016 Ratchet & Clank game that John Paquette also contributed to the writing of the game. And I was initially thinking, and my first thought was, John Paquette? Who's that? So I had to do a bit of research to find out what he did, and it turns out that Paquette has done writing for several Insomniac titles in the past, including Resistance 3 and Sunset Overdrive.
Well, Sunset Overdrive's humor is sort of like a more adult version of Ratchet and Clank's, but then you have all of the lore of Ratchet and Clank you've got to juggle.
Yeah, and I dare say Sunset Overdrive's humor is also much more daring, zany, and biting.
Well, it's a lot more biting on. It's a lot more satirical than Ratchet and Clank's is.
Yes, correct, but it is also far more willing to openly mock something rather than just stop at making fun of it, like Ratchet usually does. So that is good for Ratchet's humor. On the other hand, he's also done the writing for Resistance 3, which is often hailed by people such as Colin Moriarty for having one of the best first-person shooter stories around. With the... have you played Resistance 3? Do you know what the story is about?
I have not played the Resistance titles. That's something we're going to need to fix.
Okay, it follows the story of... Well, crap, I forgot his name. Hold on. Let me get the game out. I happen to have the box just right here. And it doesn't say his name on the back of the box. Okay, hold on. Maybe it has a manual. Maybe it's one of those classic games with character bios. Okay, let's see here. Something list. Yeah, I know the name of the protagonists of the first two Resistance game, but Resistance 3 has a different one. Susan, yes, I know. Haven, Oklahoma. Malakov. What? It doesn't say this guy's name. It is more than willing, of course, to name the weapons, like the bullseye, of course, and the chimera. But the guy's actual name... Okay, hold on. Let me go to Wikipedia. I'm dead set on finding out the name of this guy. Resistance 3, Wikipedia. You are playing as a badassman. Yes, but what is his name? Plot. Joseph Capelli. There we go. Thank you. Okay. Resistance 3 begins with Joseph Capelli immediately recapping the end of Resistance 2, where, spoiler alert, he kills protagonist Nathan Hale after he goes crazy. And the story is basically about him going to basically doing a cross-country trek over chimera infested and taken over lands, going from Oklahoma to New York. Um, being the non-American that I am, I have no idea what kind of distance that entails.
It's pretty far. It's not as far as, say, California to New York, but it's basically halfway across the country. And
Okay.
our country is the size of China.
Um, yeah, so the story follows Capelli going over to New York, but he's not doing it as part of a military organization. He's actually doing it for his wife and kid, and the story does a really good job of establishing that without trying to make it a sob story that it wants you to cry over.
Hmm.
So for me, that bodes well for if John Piquette is to be the new TJ Fixman type person for Ratchet and Clank, because he's worked on an emotional story like Resistance 3, so he is able to tell emotional story beats like, say, what happened at the end of A Crack in Time, as well as having a very good sense of humor. And both of these, I think, are very important to the modern Ratchet and Clank tale.
Yeah, and sometimes both at the same time.
Honestly, I would never really put in serious jokes in an emotional scene. I might have one sort of like a chuckle, oh, that was cute moment, but I wouldn't try to put in my best zinger right as Clank decides to leave the Great Clock, for example. That is the wrong time to do that, in my opinion.
That's true, but Ratchet and Clank does bounce between humor and serious pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know, but in my opinion, it is usually not a good idea to punctuate an emotional scene with a joke because it feels unsubtle and almost rude in a way. Like,
Mm.
it's like, dude, do you not know what you've just done? Are you not aware of the fact that you just did an emotional story beat and now you're trying to do a fart joke?
The other thing I've noticed is Ratchet and Clank in general has gone away from the scatological humor type jokes, which I appreciate because I mean, I get it. It's supposed to be a more of a family friendly thing, and that's something that little kids can understand. I mean, anybody can understand a fart joke, but
Hmm. Well,
um,
I
I,
noticed that Ratchet and Clank has moved away from using humor as its only storytelling device or way to make the story interesting. Think about how many zingers there are in Up Your Arsenal. Up Your Arsenal is arguably the funniest Ratchet and Clank game ever, but not a lot of its jokes are used for the storytelling. Um, Funnily enough, though, Up Your Arsenal does have a very Ratchet and Clank future-like story because of the fact that it is a backstory with Captain Quark and Nefarious that it actually sets up and is important to the plot. But
yeah, it's the
regardless,
first.
it is still a joke a minute type of story execution.
Yeah, it's the first Ratchet and Clank, arguably, that has a single coherent story. Not that the first two games don't, but Ratchet and Clank is Up Your Arsenal is where Ratchet and Clank finally sort of gets its feet in the ground,
Yeah, I
storytelling
mean, it
wise.
is not insignificant that Up Your Arsenal is the first Ratchet and Clank game where going to the next planet is not instigated by, here, take this.
Yeah, no, they figure it out on their own. One of them is even found inside of a a vid comic.
Yeah, well, it isn't
When
found in a vid comic, but Ratchet uses his own deductions to figure out that Metropolis is the next place to go. Now, granted, Up Your Arsenal does have a here, watch this moment, but it is more to establish where Ratchet is going next, and he doesn't get the coordinates directly from the video like in Ratchet and Clank 1 and 2.
yeah, and then from Tools of Destruction has a few info bots, but that's not the only way he gets information. And A Crack in Time, I don't think has any at all, other than the Destructopalooza, which is sort
That
of
was
not
into
the
the Nexus.
our yeah into the Nexus. But I mean, sorry, Crack in Time also has that video for the arena planet,
Does it?
yeah, the Argorian arena. It's actually something. Isn't it something that
No,
Ratchet picks up on the radio?
no. Well, he hears it on the radio, but he doesn't need the coordinates to it. Captain Quark
No.
just radios him in the Corfo sector because you head on over to the Battleplex, and
Yeah.
most players know, oh, that must be that floating ship thing.
Yeah.
So no, A Crack in Time I don't think has any sort of learn where you're about to go by watching a movie type storytelling and level progression.
No, not at all. Because most of it is either instigated by Quark or Azimuth telling you where to go, or in one case, Clank himself.
Yeah. Also worth noting that Up Your Arsenal is also the first Ratchet game to have its first death scene and funeral, or sort of mourning of a death scene, which, it turns out to be completely fake, but up until you realize that it is fake, it is played completely straight that this character has died.
Yeah. Except for the fact that Ratchet's still a jerk during it.
Well, yes, and that's what I mean about Up Your Arsenal's story. Here's Ratchet making a butt-chin joke in the middle of Captain Quark's funeral in front of somebody who loved him.
Yeah. Well, two people who love him. A very good friend and a romantic partner who we never actually see being romantic on screen.
No, we have someone who is incredibly in love with Captain Quark and Helga. Like the Galactic Rangers, comprised of the toughest, most badass people in the galaxy, and Captain Quark. So, should we end the episode on that?
Yeah, I think so. Our next episode is going to be talking about not GDC, but South by Southwest, talking about the Ted and Greg interview, as well as their booth over there and their amazing pins. Sorry.
Yeah, we basically have a couple of topics lying around that we've been meaning to use, but we've typically not had room for them. They're sort of more side ancillary topics, and we do have things to say about them, so that's probably what the next episode will be. Unless, of course, before we are able to record that episode, Insomniac suddenly announces some huge news that we absolutely must talk about.
Cough, Sunset Overdrive 2.
Yeah. And Insomniac's like, hey guys, guess what? We've decided to partner with Activision and make Spyro 4. Now that would be something we would make an episode over.
Yeah, also do not quote us on that because that's not true.
No, that's not happening until 2018, of course. Everyone knows that.
But we'd like to end the episode by plugging some of our social media.
That's not how you do it. You don't plug your stuff by saying, okay, we are into the plug section now. Plug activate. Activating plug program. We are on the Twitters and the YouTubes. Please like, subscribe, and help us in enslaving the universe. Ha 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 ha.
Did we say enslave the universe? I mean, enjoy some quality content. So,
Yeah.
KBABZ, where can we
sound
find
like
said...
those robots on Metropolis and Spyro 2.
Yes, that was on purpose.
Okay, so we are actually on the social medias, and you can find us on the social medias by through Twitter, YouTube, Google+, and Tumblr. We don't have a Facebook yet. Our Twitter is at Lunar_Observer. There weren't enough characters for us to get the Lunar Observer without an underscore, so was fun.
Yep, YouTube and Google Plus are the same. It is the Lunar Observer Podcast.
Although not on the same site,
the
obviously. Yeah,
yes.
Although not on the same website, obviously.
Well, not true, because when we post to YouTube, that information is still through Google Plus. They can click on our Google Plus account and then see that we have a YouTube.
Oh yes, of course. That didn't occur to me. I totally forgot that YouTube shoved in Google Plus integration and effectively made them the same thing, even though they're on two different sites.
Exactly. So you find us on one, you find us on both, which is why we have the same name on both. And lastly is our original, where you can find a compilation of pretty much everything we've got, and that's Lunar Observer, all one word, .tumblr.com. We've got our videos up there. We have our old audio up there. We have occasional news posts. Maybe we'll have cute images of Ratchet when the game comes out. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out this Twitter thing. I mean, maybe when I'm making an in-depth, for example, I might post up a cool screenshot that I notice and go, look at these graphics.
So many graphics. Look at all these pixels.
Good graphics! I say good graphics!
Good graphics!
I'm supposed to make a video computer game on TV without this graphic. What? You heard me? Remember these days? These are the good old days. The hay days. I can draw hay.
Vidalectrics, they do make some damn good graphics. Language.
From the company that made that game Tractor and that game Rabbit Algebra comes a video computer text adventure for your PC, featuring 2-bit mono internal speaker sound.
You do a very good Chaps Brothers impression.
I try. I mean, I can only do that particular thing. I can't really do Homestar Runner, for example. But yeah, I love those Vidalectrics advertisements. Like when they were doing a Strong Bed's Cool game for attractive people, and they had the clip of the Vidalectrics guys tried to play it with a Wiimote on their old PCs. Like, I don't understand. They said it was compatible and would work on all the latest systems. Yeah, I heard, but I don't think the system is the latest. Oh, that is it. One more crack like that, and you will never graphic in this business again. Okay, I'm sorry.
Aww.
Yeah. So I believe that will be it for the Lunar Observer. I am KBABZ.
I am Division 10, and we'll catch you in episode 17.
17?
17's our next one, yeah.
I keep forgetting these episode numbers.
Well, that's why the math guru is here to help.
Unless, of course, the meteor strikes the Earth and explodes it, in which case, we'll see you in heaven.
Heaven? You sure I'm going there?
Well, I don't know. Where are you going? The Cheers bar?
I was thinking more along the lines of purgatory, but okay.
That is a good bar. It's, yeah, I mean, watch out for Arya, though. Yeah. Hanging around the place. Messing up the place up. Giving it an old stink when it used to be a really good bar.
Smell you later.
Oh, goodness. Crazy Ride reference. Good days.
Yep, that was the point.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're done?
Yeah, we'll see you next time.